Welcome to Trading Nation. I'm Eric Chemi, and today let's take a look at emerging markets because the EEM is pacing for its best year since 2009. The Asia-heavy ETF surging 32% in 2017. But the last 2 months have not been as rosy. Is this pullback just a pause, or is this the beginning of more weakness going into 2018? Today we've got Boris Schlossberg from BK Asset Management, and Gina Sanchez is here from Chantico Global. Gina, let's start with you.
So if you look at emerging markets, remember that this is a very, very broad set of stocks. The biggest holdings in the EM ETF are the Chinese technology holdings, companies like Alibaba, Baidu, etc. Those have a different story than the rest of emerging markets. So here are the two stories. One is a technology story. That story is slowing, in my opinion. However, the growth story is actually still expanding. Those are going to be in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia and Korea. You are seeing expanded growth expectations going into 2018, and that should continue to be a tailwind. Now, there are headwinds to emerging markets generally. We are looking at a shift in monetary policy. We are going from very easy policy to a tighter monetary policy. That's going to be a risk for emerging markets. You also have inflationary pressures. Global wages are starting to firm. That could be a risk to emerging markets. But we do think that the trade story that I'm talking about is going to offset some of those risks. And we think this is still a hold.
Boris, what about you?
So I totally agree with Gina on a lot of her points, but especially I think the key point to look at here is emerging market bonds. A lot of emerging market debt is priced in dollars, and as she was referring to the fact that monetary policy in the U.S. is going to become much more contractionary, much more hawkish, if U.S. rates start to escalate higher, the dollar begins to appreciate, emerging market bonds could be the tell to whether emerging market stocks begin to wobble. That's going to be, I think, the risk as you go forward, and that's what you really need to keep an eye on as we go into 2018. For now, the trade story is certainly very positive, but there are definitely risks in front of us, and we should be wary of them as we go into 2018.
Gina, you made a good point just a second ago about what's kind of really in this ETF, and you wonder about people who maybe just don't know, right? They're investing in it based on a headline or a certain stereotype or a brand name, and maybe they don't realize what they're actually getting involved. Do you think that's a possible risk?
Well, I think a lot of people invest in these broad stories not knowing what's in the ETF. Know what you own always. And if you look at the top 10 holdings in the EM ETF, it is very heavy China, very heavy Asia. So you're looking at companies, like I said, Alibaba, Baidu. Those are stories about collecting users across the Chinese population, and they do still have some ways to go, but the technology story has been rolling over for the last few months, and I actually think that's what's pulling this down. However, like I said, the trade story is stronger, and there are pieces of the EM ETF, though not as large as the big China story. Those are actually going to fare very, very well.
And Boris, just to end with you, if you had to create your own emerging markets ETF, what countries would you put in there, right? Because we know this, like Gina's saying, this is kind of a heavy Chinese one right now, but maybe that's not the market to be in. What would you put?
Well, I definitely think Asia is still very much, Indonesia, Malaysia, those are very, very strong growth stories secularly, and they still represent, I think, a very decent play. The other interesting thing is that if you look in Latin America, maybe that's been very underrepresented and may have a pickup as global growth begins to pick up. So there are other parts of the world where you can start to look that have not participated as much. That could be a really interesting story going forward.
All right, guys, thanks so much for being here with me on Trading Nation today. That was Gina Sanchez, Boris Schlossberg. I'm Eric Chemi. We'll see you next time.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.